All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Kansas City Youth Enrichment Roundtable. My name is TeAirra Posey, and I will be one of your moderators today. But before we get started, we want to give a quick shout out and a quick thank you to two organizations here in Kansas City who have been very vital in implementing this roundtable. So tonight's event is brought to you by Entitled Learning and Black Excellence. So tonight we have Craig Moore from Black Excellence KC. Craig, would you like to tell us a little bit about Black Excellence?
Yes, thank you for having us. Black Excellence is a member-based organization geared to support Black professionals within Kansas City, starting from high schoolers up into adult learners. We pair our members up with mentors, professional development opportunities, and also career opportunities. These talks that we have on our platform, our hope is for them to be transparent and for them to be impactful to our community for its development. And we just appreciate you all allowing us to partner with you in this conversation, and we look forward to the fruits of this labor.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Craig. Thank you. Thank you. And like I said, we also have Entitled Learning here. Kevin Thompson, tell us a little bit about Entitled.
Hi, everybody. So Entitled Learning is a nonprofit that was started back in 2019, where me and my sister, Brooke Thompson, came together and saw the need for urban enrichment within the educational world in Kansas City. So Entitled Learning focuses on elementary through middle school students and enrichment of project-based learning and career exploration. What we do is we connect our history, our Black history, to those education lessons to tie that into the experience of education that the kids are working on. All of our curriculum is built in-house, which is a unique thing. And we bring all of our young professionals in and professionals in general that look like the students to connect them to the career paths that they're interested in. And I want to thank Black Excellence and all of the panelists that have joined in today.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kevin. And again, thank you, Entitled. Thank you, Black Excellence, for hosting this and for giving us the platform to talk about these things and things that affect our scholars. So again, my name is TeAirra Posey. I am actually the Director of Education and Family Engagement at the Urban League of Greater Kansas City. And again, I will be one of your moderators tonight. Along with me, Craig, if you want to bring her up, along with me to guide you all through this conversation, we have Miss Anita Maltbia. And her bio is so amazing. She has done so many things here in Kansas City, for our youth. And we're just so excited to have you here. She worked for the Kansas City, Missouri government as a city manager for 8 years. And she assumed the director position of the Green Impact Zone. Ms. Maltbia has also worked as the founding president of Keep Kansas City Beautiful Board, along with so many other things. She was the board president of Kansas City Young Audiences. So I could go on and on about Ms. Maltbia and just her contributions to our city. So Ms. Maltbia, thank you so much for being here. Is there anything you'd like to say?
Just want to say thank you so much for this opportunity to participate. I'm really looking forward to it.
Thank you. Okay, so some of you all may be wondering, what is this youth enrichment program, this youth enrichment roundtable about? Well, tonight we're going to discuss a couple things. One of the things is we're going to discuss what virtual learning looks like for us and the things that we've learned. We're going to talk about how to spark our scholars' interest in their own education. And lastly, we'll get around to talking about our local nonprofits and how they can collaborate within one another. Our panel is made up of 4 different nonprofit organizations. So I'm going to have them be pulled up and then give you about a minute and a half about each of their respective organizations. So first up, we have W.E.B. DuBois. So Craig, if you want to pull up Miss Tamara. There she is. Beautiful. Hi. Unmute yourself and let us know what's going on down at the DuBois Center.
Hello and good evening, everyone. My name is Tamara Clark Sykes, and I am the Executive Director at the W.E.B. DuBois Learning Center. We are located in the 3rd District, and our mission is to improve the academic performance of underserved students through educational services and state-of-the-art technology. We serve 1st through 12th graders at our center, and we focus on reading, math, science, and all kinds of technology courses. And our secret sauce is that we use these academic subjects as a medium by which we connect to our young people through mentorship. The W.E.B. DuBois Learning Center.
Thank you. Thank you. You want to tell them where you're located?
4510 East Linwood.
There you go. So if you have any scholars who are interested in any of the programs that she just spoke about, make sure that you visit. I know I volunteered there in the past myself, so they're doing great things for our scholars. Thank you so much. All right, next up, we have aSteam Village with Mr. William Wells. Unmute yourself, Mr. Wells. You're having a great time over there. We can hear you.
Hi. Thank you for having me. My name is William Wells. I am the founder and executive director of aSteam Village. We are a K through 12 STEM after school program. We actually is STEAM. And we also teach STEAM electives to a lot of the high schools, charter schools, Guadalupe Centers being one of them. We are a National Society of Black Engineers chapter. We were awarded and designated as the 2019-2020 National NSBE Junior Pre-College Initiative Chapter of the Year. And using STEM programs like robotics, 1080 race car engineering, game design, our whole purpose is to get these young people into the economy, tomorrow's economy, the knowledge information-based economy. So everything that we're doing is trying to get them to be knowledge workers. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. All right, next we have HBCU Walking Billboard. Can you pull up Miss Shanelle for me?
Hello, everyone. My name is Shanelle Smith. I'm the founder of HBCU Walking Billboard, a local nonprofit organization that promotes awareness of, attendance to, and graduation from historically Black colleges and universities. We partner with local schools, districts, and community organizations to heighten awareness of HBCUs and spark greater interest and attendance amongst local high school students.
All right, thank you. And last but not least, we have another representative from Entitled Learning. We have Mr. Hall. Oh, we can't hear you. Nope, now you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
There you are. There it is.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Marquis, and I am a curriculum specialist with Entitled Learning. And Entitled Learning is a nonprofit organization that uses project-based learning and the culture of Blacks and Africans and African Americans to shape what we do with children. In addition to that, our work is grounded in using people or professionals to help develop our students. So we take our curriculum and we merge it with professionals in the field like dance or STEM or even cooking, and we create a curriculum around that, and they help teach and guide our classes and our lessons. We do a fall program which takes place after school. In addition to that, we also do a summer program which will be launching on June 14th. If you would like more information about that, go to www.entitledlearning.com and you'll find more information about that.
Perfect. Thank you all so much. Again, if anyone watching is interested, watching live or watching the playback, if you are interested in any of these organizations tonight, you can find their information in the description box for this event, or feel free to reach out to Black Excellence or Entitled Learning, and we will get you connected to anyone on this panel. So we are going to honor everyone's time, and we are going to get started. So we're going to hop right into the questions. So I'm going to pose this to our entire panel, and feel free to everyone answer just all at the same time. What exactly did we learn during virtual learning? And what role does virtual education play for our scholars in the future?
I'll start. I think we learned a lot, as well as we had a lot of information that was reaffirmed that we already knew. Mainly, we were reaffirmed that for the most part, our children don't have the tools and the capacity or the teaching to be able to sustain virtual learning. This was brand new for them, unfortunately. And it just widened our academic gap. And so that was probably the most powerful thing that the country learned, is that, oh yeah, there is a gap in our students' learning, and this just made it worse. The other thing that was surprising to me was the number of adults, teachers, volunteers, everybody, who also had a technology gap when it comes to virtual learning with our students. And so not only did we have to acclimate the students to virtual learning, but it took a while for us to get our adults and our teachers comfortable enough to teach in a virtual world.
So I have a little bit of a different take. So when everything shut down in March 2020, we were preparing to take 102 students to San Antonio to the NSBE convention. And when it shut down, we closed our building and we immediately pivoted to prepare for a virtual summer camp. And what we learned from the summer camp is I was able to pull in college students from HBCUs, so to be teachers, right? I had students at Florida. I had 2 students from Florida A&M, 1 from Harris Stowe. And we had 10 students that attended from Ghana, right? For 8 weeks, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. And so it taught me and it taught us that, the new economy is here and there are no boundaries, right? There are no boundaries. But it did, to Ms. Sykes' point, it did show that there were hundreds of millions and millions of dollars thrown away for broadband. And then there was still this digital divide, right? If you remember, President Obama, one of his first initiatives was a broadband stimulus, right? And that money was passed down to the states. But if you're a red state, you're going to send that money to rural America. So our urban kids were the ones left out. And that's something I'm hoping that we're going to be able to address in the near future.
I would say that we learned that education is definitely a partnership between families and schools, and that education doesn't only happen inside the walls of the classroom, and that we have to have our parents' buy-in in order to get more things accomplished. And I really have learned that parents really are the first teachers, and that it's almost impossible to get things done without their support. So learning to adapt and learning about the different family styles that are present, that has taught us a lot. In addition to that, we also learned that we have to be able to meet students where they are. So all those different needs that they have, like those social and emotional needs, food, belonging, hunger, all of that kind of stuff, all of those things need to be met before we can educate any child. And we learned that with COVID, many of those needs weren't always met. In fact, with our program with Entitled Learning, when it came to developing curriculum and teaching classes, we would even bring the materials to our students' homes. So that was a way to make sure everybody got what they needed right then and there. And that was just this past summer.
I agree with everything that's been said so far. The only thing I would add is being at the high school level. One thing that we learned is that for some of our students who have fiscal responsibility, the virtual setting and the flexibility that it provides gave them an opportunity to improve their financial situation, be it for themselves as a result of having to live independently or being young parents, or be it for their entire family structure. Like they live in a home where the wages of their parents don't quite meet the needs to provide their basic requirements as human beings. And so as a result, we found that some of our students weren't reporting to the more structured virtual sessions where they had to check in with teachers, etc. And so for some of them, we offered night school because Southeast nights, get it, where they could come in the evening, and that was beneficial to many of them. But for most of them, what was most beneficial, especially for our juniors and seniors that were of full working age, was that completing their course requirements with the assistance of a grad lab coach on demand and having the capability to learn virtually at their own pace through the online platform we utilize, Odysseyware, it really gave our students the best of both worlds. And some of our students who were at risk of not graduating the prior year were put in position to graduate on time this year. And so that was one of the more affirming parts, I think, that was lifted out of this unfortunate event, is that through the lens of virtual learning, we were able to capture some of our students that might have fallen through the cracks otherwise.
Thank you for sharing that. I think it's important to shed light on some of those positive things, because when we think about virtual learning, most of us are like, oh my God, it was terrible. Or parents are like, oh, it didn't. And the realization is it was a godsend for some scholars, right? Some scholars learn better. Some scholars, we know, getting up at 7:10 for a high schooler and then having to go and be in school all day, it's really hard. So if I can get up later and start a little later on my schoolwork, those little things do make a really big difference in our students. And I'm glad, again, that you brought that up, that as we're transitioning back into in-person learning, because we know most of our schools are back in person, what do you think it's going to look like? Are we prepared to make changes to in-person learning from what we learned from virtual learning? Is virtual learning something that we should continue doing? Is it an option that we should continue to offer to scholars?
Yeah. Long story short is yes. The economy, everything, governance, education, business, has to digitally transform their business models, their delivery models. And for us as parents, us as children, right, we need to be taking advantage of that, because I can go to a Tuskegee and take a lesson, right? And I can be right here in my home. So I think it's a yes, because that's the economy. We weren't conditioned for that economy. You guys, your age group, TeAirra and Marquis and Kevin, y'all are the bridge. But these young people, they're going to be the change agents, and their economy is going to look like that. I mean, you look at them playing Roblox, right? Have you seen the kids playing Roblox? That's how they're going to learn, and that's how they're going to do a lot of business that way. So yes, definitely yes. And Miss Maltbia, your great niece is a rock star. She's been, Daliana, she has been one of our summer camp instructors for like 3 years. And she's amazing. I just asked her, did she know you? She said, yes, my great aunt. So kudos to you.
Wonderful. Good report. Thank you.
I'd like to just add and build on what William said. I think that there are definitely different needs depending on where the student is. For the lower age students, I think that it is more important that they have contact, whether that be through an organization like the W.E.B. DuBois, or whether that be at home, to help them live that digital life. I know that they are born into it, but not all the time. Most of the time, our children don't have access to the devices and to the bandwidth and to the tools that they need to be able to compete digitally. And so particularly for the younger students, I think that as we transition back to in person, that has to be a part of our curriculum, is making sure that we use the tools that are going to make these young people competitive.
I'll go ahead. I believe virtual learning is going to be something that is going to continue to be a thing over the next 100 years or so. It's really important because virtual allowed us to gain access to another world. You know, in many respects, and I'm just reflecting back on my experience with Entitled Learning, where we ran a cooking program, and we had scholars from Texas and even, I believe, North Carolina who were tuned in every single week waiting for a lesson. So like, when we created the lesson plans and our instruction, we made sure that we wanted to focus on our Kansas City scholars, but we took it a step further to make sure that we were inclusive enough to make sure that when we were solving problems, that we could look at the problems that were there in North Carolina and even Texas. So again, just having that access to a different world or a different perspective. And that even made a unique difference in the scholars that we had from Kansas City.
So the part that makes this question interesting to me is the "are we prepared" part, because I don't think so. I think that the preparation piece is the part that lacks, and it's layered. So one reason we're not prepared is simply access and knowledge, right? Like people, to speak to the points that have already been said, people just don't know all the ins and outs of technology. But then the other piece is, schools have been run the same way for a very long time, and comfort is very dangerous. That is what COVID's, that was one of the lit up parts of COVID. Is like people have been comfortable, and when that comfort was disrupted, people just did not know how to be. And so when I, as an educational professional in a traditional school setting, one of the big misses was the attempt to have the virtual setting operate just like the traditional setting. It was a huge miss. You can't have a kid sitting in front of a computer screen for 7 hours. It's unrealistic and it's ridiculous, right? So the preparation part is the part of the question that is challenging, because it's going to force district level leaders and charter level administrators to figure out the real ins and outs of how we transition student learning. And one of the big ways that we have to do that, especially from like a district level or a K-12 level, is recognizing that what a kindergartner needs is going to be vastly different than what a 12th grader needs. To Ms. Sykes' point, it's definitely imperative that younger individuals have that hands-on, one-on-one touch point. By 16, 17, they've been touched often enough, and they're in position to do other things. I think one of the radical things that it has shown me personally as an educator is that we waste a lot of time in high school. We really do. We give students permission really to fail. When we look at how many credits are required for them to graduate, how much time they spend in school, and how many classes they take over the course of their high school career, there are other things that kids could be doing with that time. Internships, college readiness courses, volunteer opportunities. They don't have to spend the crux of their adolescence in the walls of a school building. Education is a big umbrella. It's a vast world. And hopefully that's one of the things that, although we're not prepared to do it right this moment, that comes out of this experience.
So TeAirra, can I throw in a senior citizen request?
Yes.
Okay.
Your seasoned knowledge and wisdom is always welcome.
Well, thank you. It's hard to shut us up anyway. But you know, obviously one of the unintended roadblocks for our kids in having access to technology are their caretakers. And certainly if you ask them, they'd all want their kids to be front and center with whatever they needed in order to succeed in school. But there is everything from an inability to secure it to an actual fear, which I'm sure to young people sounds crazy, but take it from me. There's a lot of fear out there among older people, and yet they are still the ones who are responsible for what the children have at their disposal. One of the things that I think would be really fun would be to draw that circle a little bigger once or twice a year, to where you have an event where the children are teaching the adults. Have something where, and it's, you know, it's not like putting the adults on Front Street. It's like letting your kids show off what they know. There's nothing like having to teach something in order to really internalize that something. So I think that when we talk about what our children don't have, and just imagine the absolute horror of some parents when they found out that they were going to be responsible for their kid being at school virtually every day and getting online and dealing with whatever technicalities came up. If we enlarge that circle and include the parents in some fun kind of way where the children are required to know enough to be instructive and to help and guide, and there's kind of give and take, and it could be, you know, a very cleverly done event. I think that might help to heighten the awareness on the part of adult caretakers, the importance of this, what their kids know, because a lot of them, you know, I don't know, he's over there doing something. They need to be brought into the circle.
May I ask a question? Shanelle, you and TeAirra teach in the school district, right? You guys are teaching in schools? TeAirra doesn't. Chantel, okay. So Chantel, when they announced they were shutting down schools, did the IT department meet with you as an educator to say, what are your suggestions on what virtual school would look like? Did the IT department reach out to you as the teacher, the educator, to ask you, you know, what was your comfort level and put you through, you know, just the digital literacy as a teacher? I'm just interested in how they rolled that out. Did the IT department just give you something, or did they ask for your input?
So I'm an administrator in the district, and the IT department that's not their wheelhouse. They're more of a technical support. For that particular piece, that would be our curriculum, instruction, and professional development sector, as well as district level and school level leadership coming up with those plans. And there was teacher input. There was kind of like the happens chance of our summer sessions. Some of them were rooted in things like Pear Deck and some other digital learning platforms for students and teachers. So that was one good thing that we were kind of on the front end of. And then we also have an educational technology department, and part of their support for teachers and school administrators is they provide training, and they also provide coaching on how to utilize some of the technological platforms that are available to us. So all of that stuff kind of like opened up. And to be clear, like in Kansas City Public Schools, virtual learning is not new. We've always had a virtual option for students. It's been there. It grew massively. So once we went back into the hybrid model at the secondary level, a lot of our students opted to remain virtual for the reasons that I spoke of sooner. They were making money. And so for them, it's like, I'm getting my credits and I'm paying my bills. I'm cool. Like that is something that I think when we talk about changing generational wealth and eliminating poverty and improving the quality of life for some of our students, that's one of the shifts that we were actually already prepared to make. It was just like purchasing additional licenses, hiring additional staff for that sector of our district offering, because we didn't need that many teachers over there before, and we needed to rev it up. So the short answer to your question is yes, there were preparatory spaces that involved the boots on the ground personnel.
And I would just like to echo too. I teach as a teacher in the school district as well. I would say when COVID first happened and they started shutting down schools, I would say many of our teachers were not ready to engage virtually with our students. Like that was a struggle, and the district knew that, like hands down. And so one of the things there were quite a few things that the school district did, though, in order to help the teachers and the students. So one of the things that they did was, like Shanelle said, they did have a digital learning team, which was already in place before, but like now they were really, really in place. And so people definitely leaned and anchored into them to get information. Another thing that they do every year is that we have a summer institute. Unfortunately, we really didn't have a summer institute last year because of everything, but they did create modules, which we were able to do online and earn stipend pay for one. That's a good thing. But also learn the different tools that are available to us, like Flipgrid. There's also Pear Deck. There's so many different apps that were available to us. And then the last thing that they did was every school was assigned a digital learning like mentor. And so if people had difficulty using technology, they would just go to that person in their building. So, I mean, there were many avenues to make sure that teachers were successful at using the technology.
Thank you for those follow-up questions. So as we're talking about teachers becoming more technologically savvy, when we think about our scholars and we think about how careers are becoming more tech savvy, how do we ensure that our students meet those expectations that are being set for them when we know that there is a digital divide and we know that our students are still suffering from that? We have some districts that did go one-to-one with devices, but we have students who maybe didn't have the Wi-Fi, or we have students or scholars in rural areas who don't even have that. We may have charter schools who were not able to provide our students with those one-to-one devices. Personally, I've worked with students. I had a student, a family actually, there were two scholars in the house. One scholar was doing the homework off a laptop, and the other scholar was doing the homework off of their phone. Fortunately enough, the Urban League was able to provide that family with a device. But you know, everyone isn't that lucky. So how do we make sure that our students are meeting or exceeding? We want them to exceed those expectations.
Well, I guess I'll take this. I'll take this one first, because this is I have a sore spot about this. For many years, you mentioned digital divide, and people start talking about devices, and the devices they're talking about are used devices, right? Give the poor people used devices, right? And then you have another group that will say, well, they need connectivity, so let's give them hotspots, right? And for me, I think that the Urban League, Entitled Learning, W.E.B, DuBois, aSteam Village, we should be coming together and we should be looking at what is going to be best for these youth and these families that we serve. Last year for our summer camp, you know the device we gave them? We gave them Raspberry Pis. Why? $75, plug into a TV, and it teaches them coding. It is packed with stuff that teaches them what they need to know in order to participate in a knowledge and information-based economy. The students that came to our summer camp that had the Chromebooks, you can't download apps on Chromebooks. You need to learn how to use a lot of these apps. You have to be able to write code. You need a Unity game engine to do 3D game design so you can be an automotive engineer. You can't download that on Chromebooks, but the Chromebooks were a Band-Aid, right? We don't need Band-Aids. We need solutions that are lasting, longing solutions, and solutions that will allow you to, when Shanelle talked about generational wealth and participating in the economy, that means that you have a different mindset, but those decisions will not be made unless organizations like ours are making those decisions together and looking at where we want to go. I mean, Kevin, he's a Missouri S&T grad doing construction. He knows what you need when you're trying to be an engineer and you're trying to pursue engineering, and you're going to need more than a Chromebook in order to learn those tools to be able to move ahead. So that I will touch. I'll go on mute.
I guess I would just echo what William said. I don't know, and I don't even want to believe that it's just organizations like ours that have the responsibility to provide our students with the right tools. I think that it is also a responsibility of our school systems to be able to provide our students with the right tools. My experience has been with some of the private schools in Kansas City, and I tell you, those students do not have Chromebooks. And so they didn't miss a beat when they went virtual. So I think it's the responsibility of our school systems to make sure that they are setting our students up for success, as well as organizations like ours to influence the policies of the districts around us so that we can make an impact for our students.
I would also add that, like, if operating in true community, like organizations like ours, districts, charters, parochial schools, like all of us are nonprofit entities. But there are lots of big businesses in Kansas City, lots of corporations that have a communal responsibility to the areas in which they thrive. So they're making lots of money here. And if our students' devices and technological opportunities are lacking, then the billions of dollars that they are bringing in profit, there should be parts of it that are earmarked for the students in the districts in which their headquarters or corporations are located. So I think that that's another way in which we can broaden the responsibility, especially from a fiscal point. Like our organizations, the schools and the districts, we're the boots on the ground handling the educational piece. So the academic capital is ours, but the fiscal capital is not. And so I think that that's another place for us to expand our reach.
And I would just like to echo what Shanelle was saying. I think it's also really important that no one organization can do like everything. Like it is just impossible to do. So like as nonprofits, we need to work with one another to see who has the resources, and like maybe we should be doing referrals to another agency, because at the end of the day, we all need to be working together, because we shouldn't all be competing for the same kids. Like that's not what this is about. It's about us working together. And I know there's organizations in Kansas City that do technology really well. The one that I can think of like off the top of my head is Connecting for Good. I know that they donate computers, they take used computers, they sell computers at like really, really cheap rates, and just making sure that everybody has access. Like that's what it's all about. It's ensuring access for all of the students that we serve.
Well, I love this discussion, and I love hearing you all indulge in what I call possibility thinking. And possibility thinking is the one thing that if the tooth fairy gave me a wand and said, what would you do for your children, for your children of color, your African-American children? I would say I would find a way to provide exposure such that it would broaden their possibility thinking. I can't fix their houses. I can't make sure they have breakfast. I can't deal with their divorced parent, whatever the situation might be. But if that little mind can catch fire because it's been exposed to the possibilities, and that's what all of you guys do, which is fabulous, fabulous.
Keyword exposure.
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 Our children, too many of our children, let me put it this way, not all, but too many of our children, their outlook is circumscribed like this. And there's a whole big world out there. And so what you guys do in presenting to them opportunities to understand what's out there, what the world is requiring, and what the possibilities are. So my question would be, how can we create new and engaging methods to introduce and expose students to various career industries? And give me some examples.
My mic is off. I'll go. I've not been with the W.E.B. DuBois Learning Center for very long, but hands down, the thing that impressed me so about this organization was who is providing the service. And the who are African American professionals, for the most part, who are standing in front of children with their law degrees, with their engineering degrees, with their PhDs, with their degrees, standing in front of these children as culturally competent, caring adults who inspire and expose our children to things that they wouldn't otherwise have access to. And so that right there, no matter what we do, people who are culturally competent, caring adults have to expose these children. Doesn't really matter what we expose them to in terms of making them more successful, because by and large, our children are not getting exposed to that. When they go to school in their schools, they're not seeing those images of people that they can aspire to be as much as their counterparts are. So to me, that is hitting a nail on the head. There aren't enough nonprofits in this country for us to compete with our children, because we still have far too many children who are still falling through the cracks. And the ones that aren't falling through the cracks still aren't on par with their counterparts. So competition should be a bad word, a dirty word in this kind of environment.
So one of the, exposure is very big. And that's why we pulled our robotics program out of the Kansas City region, and we put our robotics into the Nesby region, and made a commitment that every March we were going to take our students to the convention. And a lot of times when we take those students, a lot of parents go, because the convention is different places. And there's nothing more powerful than that student who's making their first convention, getting off of the bus and going into the convention center and seeing 15,000 African American K through 12 students, professionals and college students, grad and undergrad, and to see 4,000 undergrads in dresses and in suits with stacks of resumes over in a career fair where Fortune 1 and Fortune 500 companies are recruiting them and interviewing them on site to do internships. We just got a letter, a student, we always have a student spotlight in our newsletter, and the one that's coming out this week, he said something. He said, I cannot wait. I don't know what kind of engineer I want to be. I'm going to be an engineer, but I can't wait until I have on a suit and I'm going to apply for a job. And he's in the 8th grade. Ms. Maltbia, you talked about a light. Yeah, when that light goes on, you can't turn it off. What we need are more lights on, because when we have more lights on, then a lot of these pains that we're throwing money away, and these discussions that we're talking about crime and healthcare, when lights go on, that stuff goes down, because those lights will end up in the economy. And when they're in the economy, their decision-making process is totally different, because they're not living in survival mode, right? They are going someplace, and they know they're going someplace. So their decision-making process is going to be totally different.
William, that is so powerful, because the exposure that you guys are using is travel. And whoa, I mean, you can be 50 years old, 70 years old, 80 years old, and have your mind broadened by going somewhere else, right? Let alone little sponges that our children are. So I commend you guys for taking that tack. That is wonderful. And what Tamara talked about, having, and boy, do I love that you emphasize culturally competent. That is so important. I remember back in the day when I was doing some volunteering for the Urban League, and there was a format where folk would go into the school talk to a class for maybe 20 minutes, and that was it. Or they would have what they called expo fairs. I don't know if you guys still have those or not. Not okay. Well, anyway. Yeah, but some of the folk, you know, kind of made you cringe because their approach was, "I'm an engineer and you're not." You know, and you could see the kids were lost. I mean, they lost the kids right away. So
Absolutely.
your emphasis on culturally competent is right on point, I think.
I would just add one more thing, just from a personal experience real quick. I am a very proud graduate of Tuskegee University, and I cannot tell you how, I can't describe the feeling that I have as an old person going to an HBCU homecoming and being surrounded by so many academically gifted, successful Black professionals. So if I'm still in awe and I lived through it, imagine what that kind of exposure does for a young mind. I mean, I love this HBCU walking billboard. I mean,
and I just want to add to just to piggyback off a little bit of what Ms. Maltbia was saying. One thing that I try to do is get my students, my scholars, linked up with people who look like them, who are doing exactly what they want to do. So anybody that comes through, anyone that comes through, any scholar that comes through the Urban League, when we talk about, oh, what do you think you want to do when you grow up? You're probably going to change your mind, but what do you think about it right now? Let's find somebody that went to the school that you want to go to, and let's get you talking to them about this career, because you could either be like, yes, this is what I really want to do, or nah, it's not. it's not really what I thought. And again, we all know when we see someone that looks like us doing what we want to do, it just gives us hope. It gives us that possibility thinking that Ms. Maltbia was talking about.
Okay.
I would like to say one thing, Ms. Maltbia. So Entitled Learning, I would say, does a fantastic job at exposure. I think that's the number one thing in our entire agency. In fact, we take like a Booker T. Washington approach, and we know that Booker T. Washington said that learning is done best when it's done with our heads, hearts, and hands. And so Entitled Learning uses that philosophy in order to teach our students. So one really great concrete example is that when we did our project-based learning for cooking, we developed a problem and that the students had to solve it. And the other thing that happened was that the students got a chance to work with professionals who looked exactly like them. So every single week they were excited to log on and try to solve some kind of problem. So like 1 week we looked at, why are there a whole bunch of Family Dollars on the east side of Kansas City? Why is it that certain grocery stores offer certain things in some neighborhoods, but not in other neighborhoods? And how can we help bridge this gap or fix it? So that was just one of the things that I wanted to highlight with our program.
Thank you for doing that. I love what you all did. And I saw the little 6-year-old with the suit and the hat, and he was explaining his project. I tell you, that kid had me. But look at the confidence that he had. Just, yes. First of all, working the project, but then being required to explain the project. Yeah.
Yeah, presentation skills are a must.
Are a must. You know, I've been associated with and on the board of High Aspirations, which is a mentoring program for African American boys 8 to 18. And up until COVID, we would have an annual event that included a banquet. And one of the things that we did was to have a manners class. Why? Because when these kids go into these big places and they sit down at that luncheon or that banquet, and they've never seen that many knives and forks and spoons, it puts them in a place of uneasiness. Our children were then given a little short course on that, and you should have seen their little chests stuck out at the banquet knowing what to do. That's a level of exposure too. Our kids need those tools so that when they do go to these places, they don't shrink. They feel confident. They feel like they belong there. So I just applaud the work that you all are doing so much.
I'd like to add too, if it's okay, I'd like to add that like in our community, I think that people are starting to recognize the need for diversifying how we expose students to various careers. So like Kansas City Public Schools launched their real world learning position last year and a little over a year ago. And that department is growing vastly with offering internships, job shadowing opportunities, etc. for secondary students. The Manual Technical and Career Center has offered up more offerings for students to explore beyond what was there before, such as culinary, auto body and collision, etc. But then my sons play for the Kansas City Kings baseball team. And so the Urban Youth Academy has offered opportunities for our players to explore other careers in sports. I think that part is huge. And the more we can get our young people who love sports and are extremely athletic to recognize that if it doesn't pan out on the field or on the court, there are a billion other ways that you can still impact yourself financially with something you love that just might not be playing the game. You might be a sports commentator. You could be a general manager. There are so many other office gigs or just other opportunities there. And for us with HBCU Walking Billboard, our big thing is exposing students to opportunities for their post-secondary education that they wouldn't otherwise see. But students who live in the South, it's more so. That's a big layer for us in terms of what we see as exposure, is that sometimes the best fit or the right fit isn't what students are being exposed to. And so we want to make sure that they have a smorgasbord of college options before they commit to one.
A couple of people have mentioned meeting students where they are, and I wanted to just elaborate on that just a minute. Obviously, that's one of the things that we try real hard to do at the W.E.B. DuBois Learning Center. When we get a child in, we are always doing an assessment on them to find out where they are, no matter what grade they're in, or no matter what economic status they have. We do an assessment to find out where they are, and then we place them according to where they are. And that not only goes with their academic abilities, but also, like the Shanelle and Miss Anita said earlier, in their interest. Because if you can meet a person, let alone a child, but if you can meet a person where they are interested, you have their attention. And far too long, those old parenting tapes, far too long, I think we as a Black community tried to mold our children into something that somebody said that they needed to be. And unfortunately, you can't put a square peg in a round hole. And so equal to exposure, I think, is meeting a child where they are and then pulling and inspiring them to be the best that they can be from where they start.
Yeah, and needless to say, our history is such that the parents didn't indulge in possibility thinking. And there are a whole lot of reasons why that didn't happen. All sorts of things that had to do with discrimination and segregation and so forth. So, yeah, when I was coming along, a doctor, a lawyer, or a teacher, that was it. The point is excellent, Shanelle, that you made, that there's all sorts of things, If you're not bouncing the ball, how about being the therapist that's back in the office? Okay, so let me go on to this question. Should equity, Black history, and self-esteem continue to be introduced into today's curriculum? And I think we started to touch on that, but let's expand that a little bit. If so, what does that look like?
The the NSBE mission to increase the number of culturally responsible Black engineers that excel academically, succeed professionally, and positively impact the community, right? So yes, it does need to be introduced, but by who should it be introduced, right? So we had, like Dr. Carl Mack, we had him in for a virtual fundraiser. He wrote the Black History calendar, and we did it on December 6th, which was the ratification of the 13th Amendment, which said slavery is no longer legal in the United States. We celebrate Juneteenth, and he has a big thing about there was 275,000 people still enslaved in Delaware and Kentucky when we had Juneteenth. So we're celebrating the wrong things. We're not defining our own history and sharing our own history. So if we're doing that, we're misinformed. And if we're misinformed, we're miseducated. And we all know Carter G. Woodson's book, right? So, yeah, I think it's important, but I think it's important by who that is being introduced and is being taught.
That's exactly
the right way.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I would contend that it's equity and Black history and self-esteem, maybe not so much Black history, but history has always been a part of our curriculum. The problem is not what's in the curriculum, it's who's teaching the curriculum. To William's point, and I think once we get more culturally competent educators standing in front of our children, that will take care of itself. I would prefer us to put our emphasis on let's get more culturally competent educators in the classroom than I would put emphasis on changing the curriculum.
I'd have to say that it's both. So I'm the associate principal of the African Centered Upper School at Southeast High School. And we had Dr. Kunjufu do an African Centered training for our teachers before we returned to school, because although it's a school within a school model, we really want all of our instructors to understand what Afrocentricity really is and what an African Centered education needs to look like. But it can be difficult to do that when the curriculum that is being taught is anything but Afrocentric. So I think that there has to be, like, those two things go in tandem to me, because we could put 1 million Black teachers in front of Black babies, but if they still teaching that Columbus founded America, we have a problem. And so I think that the two of those things have to come together. I am really kind of like floored by Entitled Learning's whole approach, because it sounds like this question, they are part of the answer. Like, that is what it looks like to me, is being able to provide a holistic experience where students their identity is at the root, and then everything else flourishes from that. That is where the educational overhaul would need to happen. And that, one, goes against everything that America stands for. So we know that that's problematic fresh out the gate. But then two, the amount of manpower that that's going to take, because it's not just what's written, it's mindsets, it's behaviors. Like, there's a lot that has to change. And so I think that organizations like the ones that we all represent are definitely great starting points, but galvanizing the community, the educational community around us, and helping expose the things that need to change is where we need to be.
And I would like to echo that. We also need to think about who's actually creating this curriculum for our students. We want to make sure that our students are getting an experience that really shows and values the strengths that are within our own culture. I mean, it's really disappointing to walk around to different schools and you hear that all the kids know is Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King. I also teach at the African Center School across the street from Shanelle, and to be honest, we only talk about slavery for like 1 week out of the whole school year. So we don't talk about it that much. But what we do talk about is, hey, before that happened, in Africa, there were kings and there were queens and there were empires that ruled and they flourished, and that we were successful people. We just make it known that slavery interrupted our history, but that's not where it starts and ends for Black people. In addition to that, when we move into like February, we talk a lot about like Black scientists and Black inventors. And during that time, our students do a science fair project, and they really dive deep into like some of the inventions that were created by Blacks. So we're not giving a whole lot of praise to different people, to people that did not create what we created, and we're just basically strengthening what we have done as a community.
So I heard a very chilling fact the other day on yet another Zoom from an administrator who has a connection to one of the large textbook publishing companies. The connection told him that the state of Texas requires a different set of history books, and that slavery is being diminished as even being mentioned, let alone you're knowing, the usual 2 or 3 names. The other thing I'm wondering is if you all have noticed the legislation that's being passed in states now. And of course, that legislation applies to public schools, which is going to make the work of nonprofits like you even more critical and even harder if this legislation gets put into place and is enacted. So it's something worth watching. It might be something, TeAirra, to have another panel discussion on at some point, because there are folk who are taking axes to the education of our children. Very practically.
Yeah, I actually read that article as well. It's not only Texas, Idaho. It was like 4 or 5 states that have already passed some sort of legislation like that. And we also have a lot of districts in different states talking about the critical race theory and if they're going to teach it or not and the issues with that. I had another point, but it's gone now. So yeah, I did read that article. Oh, Texas is one of the hugest publishers of textbooks in general. So, if whatever they put out, it goes nationwide. So it is absolutely something that we need to keep an eye on, or make sure that we have people that are writing the curriculum to include everything, the truth, as well as, the truth. I'll just leave it at yeah.
I would like to say thank God we have to go virtual, because none of that stuff really matters, because we have access to all of the knowledge and information that we have. We just, as mentors, as educators, as parents, we need to make sure that we have ours pointing to the right information and pointing away from the wrong information. So to me, you can put it in the classroom, but that doesn't make it, that relevant. It doesn't mean that we have to take it because so.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right, so we're gonna just in honoring everybody's time, we're gonna go on and make sure we hit these last 2 questions. So now we want to talk about just the nonprofit space in general. So the question we want to pose is, because we have some organizations, some nonprofit organizations that have been existing in Kansas City doing a great job for a number of years. And we have a couple of new nonprofit organizations here represented. So how do we see our seasoned and our new nonprofit organizations coexisting in Kansas City? How do you see us working together? What does that look like?
It looks like us working together and, not worrying about who's the top billing, who gets credit, what awards are being done, but let's focus on what the common good that needs to be served. And, a selfless approach, right? If we're selfless as individuals and let selflessness be the foundation of the DNA of our organizations. And we have clearly defined strategies that are addressing clearly defined problems that need solutions. I don't see it there as being any problem. And oh, by the way, also not and knowing that we're smart enough and we have the talent to be able to develop a strategy and implement our strategy. We don't need somebody else to come in and help us to implement our solution or our strategy. We can do this together, and it's just working together and being selfless. It's that simple to me. It's not rocket science.
Yeah, I would also echo that, being one of the older organizations on the call here. It's really going to take a village to get where we need to be. And that's like an old cliche, but that's the truth. Too many, if we didn't have a problem with our children being successful in this country, if we didn't have a problem, if 98% of them grew up to be all that they wanted to be, then we might have an issue or a conflict among ourselves. But because that is not the case, and we still have children who are dropping out of school, we still have children who aren't getting jobs, we still have children in poverty and who are illiterate, we don't have time to not be selfless, to use William's word. We just don't have time for that. I think that we all have to be relevant and impactful in our communities. And as long as we all are or stay relevant and impactful, we will be able to work together for the common good of our communities.
I think that opportunities like this are important. There are lots of nonprofits, and not everybody knows that everyone exists or what everyone does. I've written it all down, so I know who to call on for what. TeAirra and I are working together in tandem. The Urban League's been really pivotal in helping me get off the ground, just in terms of support. Like, if nothing else, just supporting how we can work together. But the other part, I think, is providing the more structured space, like think tanks or unconferences, where nonprofits come together and kind of lean on one another for program development or improvement, or even if it's just like mentorship. Like somebody like myself, I'm very new. And so if there is a more seasoned veteran in the nonprofit game that can help me really bring my vision to life for the impact it can have on the greater good of our community, then that's a win for everybody. So I think these types of spaces are the ones that really connect us and help us see how we can collaborate.
And I would say it's really important that we stick together to, one, pull resources, and also to be able to connect with one another and share information. There's so many things that we may miss out on if we're operating in our own individual silos. But by working together, we can gather and harness more information, as well as provide better access for our students. So those would be my 2 key points.
So let me say, because you all are hard workers and you have full plates, that even though the answer is simplistic, the reality is difficult to achieve without intentionality followed by action. When you're making up your list of goals, collaboration should be on there.
Absolutely.
And very seldom is it, in my experience, because you got lots of other stuff that's center of the plate, right? But when we come to realize that old idiom about the branches being bundled together and how much stronger they are, and each one is an important thing. So it's not like folk have to give up what they are working on or what they believe in, but the coming together provides that strength. And so I would just say that it is desired, no doubt, but without intentionality followed by action, it typically doesn't happen. And the last thing I would say is be sure that on the list is to ask folks. Okay, we talked about the corporations. Make sure you ask.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about successful people in the community. Make sure you go ask them, hey, can you come and do A, B, C, X, Y, Z? A lot of times it's as simple as that. And when you are so devoted, like you all obviously are, it's kind of like, well, they know what the problems are. Why aren't they showing up? Well, it doesn't work that way because everybody has got their own plate of stuff. But when you enter their sphere and make some cogent points about what could happen just by them interfacing or them supporting, is when you'll be surprised how many folk will say yes.
Like a panel in the council of nonprofits. We have a model.
All right. So I think we've kind of touched on this last question that we have, but if anyone has anything to add to it, I'll go ahead and ask it. And then we'll go ahead and close and just have a space for some closing remarks. So the last question is, how can we as nonprofit work towards sharing those resources and talent? And I think Ms. Maltbia just did an excellent job of wrapping that all up by the very simple thing of asking and not being afraid to share. And I think one thing is we need to be open to helping each other. At the end of the day, we're all trying to help our scholars, and that's really all that matters, is the help that we provide to our scholars. Did anyone want to add anything to that last question? No, seeing none. Okay, we have about 15 minutes left, so I do want to give everyone a chance to give remarks. And Ms. Maltbia?
Yeah, so I have a question. What is your wildest dream? Each of you.
So I always said we're planting a seed that's going to grow into an oak tree that the young people are going to get to enjoy the shade and I won't, right? I'm good with that. So my wildest dream would be wherever I am, hopefully north, not south, that I'm able to look down and watch these young people enjoy that shade. And then look over at my mom and dad and they say, well done. That would be my wildest dream.
My wildest dream is that 47 years from now, my 47-year-old organization that has already begun to see generational success will continue to morph into relevant services that in 47 years, our services will look very different than what they look like today, but they will be just as impactful. That we will have laid the framework where we're all about building our community and building our youth academically. And there is no gap, but we're just getting better and better and better. And we have the facility and the people institutionalized or systemically interwoven such that it goes on into perpetuity.
My wildest dream is that years from now, we won't need Pearson and we won't need McGraw-Hill. We'll be able to use the curriculum that we've developed in Entitled Learning, and that will go nation and even worldwide. We will want to make sure that our students know exactly who they are, where they come from, their power, their identity. All of that matters, and that they are definitely powerful. So that is my wildest dream for entitled learning.
My wildest dream is for HBCU Walking Billboard to become a national model as a college conduit to get students from high school into institutions that more than likely will serve them best. And that looks a lot of ways. I'm thinking like not just Kansas City, but Wichita, KCK, like surrounding areas west and north where students just aren't as exposed to HBCUs. But in addition to that, something as simple as when the question is asked, like right now, if you ask a baby in Kansas City where they going to college, a lot of times you get the same 4 schools, right? I want our schools to be at the top of their list. I want to replace the common Mizzou KU answer with Fisk or Spelman or Johnson C. Smith or Tuskegee. Like I got you. I was coming. But I want those to become normalized responses when we listen to our babies tell us where they want to go to school.
Love that question.
Great
What
question.
about you, TeAirra?
Oh, you see, I was so intentionally listening to everyone else that I was not thinking about an answer. So I guess my wildest dream would be for all of these dreams to come true. How about that?
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Wow, really? You gotta go like that?
That was smooth. That was very smooth.
Real smooth.
So as we are coming to a close, I do want to give everyone a chance to say a closing remark. And so I'm just going to go by the order that you are on my screen. W.E.B. DuBois Learning Center, closing remark for this evening.
Well, first of all, I would definitely like to thank Entitled Learning and Black Excellence KC for hosting this. I think our community needs a lot more of these because it just feels comfortable. And the more comfortable we are, the more results and impact that we're going to have. So thank you for our host. Not just for hosting, but also putting me in a space to have a conversation with such people as yourselves. That just makes me stronger so that I can go out and do the work that I'm doing. We at the W.E.B. DuBois Learning Center have been around for 47 years and plan to be around for a lot longer than 47 more years because our students need us. And we feel like we are poised and positioned and have the resources right at our fingertips to harness the energy and the education and the everything that our students need. And so we're just really looking forward to working more closely with like-minded organizations to make an impact on our students.
Thank you so much, and thank you for being here. Next on my screen, aSteam Village, Mr. William Wells.
So I'm not going to talk about me. I just want to leave, since everybody says that we know Dr. King, I just want to leave 2 quotes that are relevant. One of them is like redefining what education is, right? So all of you in this panel, I'm honored to be here, and you remind me of this quote. Rarely do we find, Harrison sent me a text and it covered up my message. Rarely do we find men who willingly engage in hard, solid thinking. There is an almost universal quest for easy answers and half-baked solutions. Nothing pains some people more than having to think. And that leads me to his definition of education, which I think has been like not defined correctly. And I think this is it. The function of education is to teach one to think intensively and to think critically. Intelligence plus character. That is the goal of true education. And if you do that, and we approach education like that, as opposed to A, B, C, F, right? ACT this. That's how we bring up and expand and make sure that these young people participate in the economy, because at the end of the day, that's where they need to be, and that's what all of our goals should be, is moving people into the economy, not as workers, but as they're creating their own boardrooms, being leaders in their organizations, starting businesses. So with that, I'll go. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Shanelle with HBCU Walking Billboard.
I'll just close by saying thanks for having me. It was great to get connected to some other nonprofit leaders and really kind of stretch how HBCU Walking Billboard can both support and be supported. The one thing that I probably want to leave with everyone is that if you are serving elementary, middle, and high school students, just lift up as much HBCU opportunity as possible, so that they know that those schools are there and that those schools are the ones that could potentially be the best fit for them.
And thank you.
Up there.
Last but not least, Hall from Entitled Learning. I've been calling you by your last name this whole time. I'm sorry.
It's all good. I would like to thank everybody for having Entitled Learning on today. There's a couple of things I do want to share. If you have the ability to volunteer with us, please, we are always looking for volunteers. We got a lot of programming coming out in just a few weeks. Our summer program is about to launch on June the 14th. Super excited for that. So if you can get involved, please try to get involved with us. There's a whole lot of moving parts to this vehicle. The other thing I want to do is I want to leave you with a quote from Malcolm X. I know a lot of times schools don't talk about Malcolm X, but we talk about Malcolm X. I don't think that they know how to talk about Malcolm X. But one of the quotes that he said was, "Education is our passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to the people who prepare for it today." So it's important that all of us still collectively work hard together and make sure that we are preparing our students as best as we can, even in the midst of everything that they have going on, because we don't take excuses from our kids. They can do it and they will do it. They'll rise to the expectations that we set for them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, Ms. Maltbia, I know you didn't think I was going to forget about you. Any closing statements?
Yeah, I feel good. When you can be in a circle with people and you come away feeling lifted, then you know that the possibilities still exist for success. That's who you all are. And so I appreciate you. I thank you for this opportunity. I'll be looking for ways to be of help, and I just ask that the Lord bless each and every one of you.
Thank you so much. And Hall, thank you. I don't think I thanked you after you talked. Thank you for everyone here. We really appreciate this. This conversation was amazing. I know Entitled Learning is looking to have more roundtables like this. So be on the lookout for my email, because I will be emailing you back. We're also, let's pull Kevin Thompson back in here, who is part of Entitled Learning, and we're going to let him close us out. Kevin. All right.
I want to piggyback off of what Ms. Maltbia said. This was very inspiring. This is what needs to happen in Kansas City. We need to all come together as professionals, as educators, and build this together. So I thank all of the panelists. I thank our beautiful moderators. I thank the generations before us that have instilled this in us. And I tell the generation behind us, we're coming for you. We need you to keep this mantle going on. So I thank everybody. I'm not going to talk too much. Be looking out for more of these roundtables. Thank you, Black Excellence, for hosting us tonight. And everyone have a good night.